Hello, Miss Lin Shaye. How are
How are
you?
you? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I don't know. These are very unpleasant moments, to be honest. I'm not feeling so chipper, but I'm happy to talk to you. And it's really been pretty unnerving. I mean, here in Los Angeles, there's what's going on right now, too.
Mhm.
But not to get into a whole political discussion, since that's not why we're talking to each other. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad this worked out. We sort of got lost in the translation a little bit, so sorry if it seemed like it took us time to connect to you, because anyway, it all worked out. So, how
Yeah.
are you?
No, it's totally fine. It's amazing to be able to see you. Yeah, it
Yeah,
has.
I know. Really,
It's been some trying times. Well, I had one question concerning that. During this era, people have taken a lot of solace in horror films, in particular the Insidious franchise and recently The Grudge. And I
yes.
wanted to know how you thought of fans taking solace in your performances and films that you've been in during this trying era.
That's a really sweet question. First of all, that you even think that that I have that ability to give people some kind of peace of mind. I'm very touched by that. If that's how people are feeling, Elise in particular, I think is a very interesting character. People would ask what was her appeal. Basically, it certainly wasn't her beauty. That's for sure. But I think it's because she is a compassionate person, and she is a yes person. She's not her life is not does not revolve around herself. It revolves around others, and maybe that's a really big message to put out into the world right now. Everybody is so busy blaming everybody and
Mhm.
feeling that it's their fault, and I think that Elise in particular is a character of real compassion. So maybe that is what people are, sort of latching on to right now.
Yeah, and because in particular, when we look at some of your characters that you've performed as, it's not really that typical high school scream
Right.
of your character. You bring some sort of drama and realness to your characters, especially with Elise and Faith from The Grudge. The With your character, um, it shows this wide spectrum of horror characters that are performed and how people can relate to them, and it makes it more human, I think, um, with Elise in particular.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned The Grudge too, because, I guess the bottom line is I approach everything. Um, I never think about genre at all, not even in comedy. I approach everything with sort of traditional acting elements, which is what's the story, what does the character want, what does she need, what does she have to do to get what she wants. I mean, they're very basic needs for each character, and then that's of course couched in the storyline of who this person is and what they need for themselves, and also in terms of a character. And Faith, I loved The Grudge. I know a lot of people, were, I think, a little disappointed that it didn't fulfill their expectations of what they thought how the franchise should be continuing. But I found it very. There was a lot of compassion and passion in that film, because Nicholas Pesh, who's the writer and director, approached it from a different place. Kind of, it had horror in it, but it was really a drama, and it was a very dark drama about these three women's lives. When you break it down to what that really was about, it wasn't only a horror film. It wasn't only entertainment. I find entertainment, that word, sort of interesting, because um, it's entertainment, but it's also philosophy, and it's also um, sort of penetrating people's emotions, and hopefully evoking things from them that they don't always feel, or that they don't allow themselves to feel in real life. So I feel very fortunate and very emotional, especially. So I'm going to probably cry. I hope you don't mind.
You're totally fine.
But it's really it's a very important aspect of, I think, entertainment is an interesting word, as I say, because it's not that it's fun. it's about exploration of your own feelings in a safe place.
And
That's kind of that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
having a conversation with your audience.
Yes, yes, and that sort of unbeknownst to them, you sort of sneak it in there. You know, it's because you sneak in your own perspective on life, and you know, again, you do it through the storytelling. But I feel very lucky to have that be a part of my self-expression and my way to connect to people. So it's an important part. It's an important part of myself. It's also an important part of everyone's life, really, when, you know, because it is this safe place to explore really what you think and feel.
I think with this role in particular, and with the role in Insidious, they represent something that can be deeply personal. And it's for a lot of women out there who have not been well represented in film. So for people with dementia, or people like Elise and your character in The Grudge, who are of older age, you don't see that in Hollywood. We see a lot of women who are above their 30s only playing a certain set of roles. And
Right.
in these films, you play some of the most impactful characters that I've seen in horror in the past few years.
Thank you for saying that, first of all. And, you know, I kind of have my mom and dad to thank for this. I never think in category. I never think in age range. I never think, I mean, maybe I better, or I should, you know, maybe I better start, you know, because that's the thing about this pandemic that's been very interesting. I've spent a lot of time with myself and a little bit, almost too much. Like I'm a little sick of myself on some respect. And it also gives you a place to sort of reconsider what are the things that I like about myself and what are the things that drive me crazy and that I maybe would like to change. And I think we've all had, you know, this has been an extraordinary time, meaning that word literally. It's really extraordinary. We have never had that in my lifetime, this amount of time to confront yourself. You know, whether you're with a family or you're not with a family, or you're married or you're not married, it doesn't matter. You're pushed together and you're being forced to identify how you really feel about things. And so I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to play these characters that can be older or old or really old, depending on where we're heading. And I'm glad people are listening, because listen, you got two choices. You're either going to get old or you're going to be dead, you know, and I prefer to be old as long as you're healthy. It's kind of, you know, you hope to maintain your vitality and your thought process. And the other thing is, this is kind of personal in a way, but I'm noticing more things about myself that I was trying not to notice before. You know, like, well, okay, I guess does that hurt what I've done? You know, or but you know, we all run away from that part of ourselves, because I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't know why getting old is supposed to be a bad thing, because it's I mean, there's so many things that come with experience and with process. And again, when you're younger, I mean, you know, I've had a wonderful career so far, and I say so far, I hope I get another job one of these days. You know, but I mean, I've been allowed to explore my process, you know, more or less. So I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm in this wonderful show. I'm on Penny Dreadful right now, which is on Showtime. And the character is not, there's so many, it's such a rich show. I've never worked with John Logan before. And I'm realizing I'm sort of defining, it's like opera almost. It's sort of this heightened, all the characters are very powerful, intense, expressive. So the character that I play, it's almost like the description of her character at this moment feels almost richer than what I've been allowed to do up to this point on camera. Because she's a Nazi hunter. It takes place in 1938 Los Angeles. I'm supposed to be, the character was written for someone 80s, 90s. And so when they offered me the role, I took a good look in the mirror, and I thought,
No, but
all right, well, whatever, like. So we didn't.
I mean, that validates the point of a lot of your characters, like this upcoming character, Elise. It proves that no matter the age, you can play a badass.
Well, that's what I mean. So I was really flattered again that John Logan targeted me for this role. I didn't know whether I should be insulted. Oops, I just spit on the screen. But I wasn't, and I was very excited about it. But my point is this: here she is, this woman was born in 1865. In terms of character development, that's the reality that was written in the story, because it takes place 1938. So I'm supposed to be like, I'm almost 90 years old. We did no age makeup at all, but it's just this character who she's a revolutionary. She ran guns for the Cubans during the Spanish-American War. She learned explosives from anarchists. This is all in the story. So it was kind of exciting to realize that this was one of the few times it had nothing to do with how you look. It had to do with and I love John, thank God. I mean, that's a real plus for women, to say, it's not about giving you wrinkles and having you walk around like a little old lady. Now this woman is like, don't look at me like that. She tells people what she feels and thinks. So maybe things are shifting a little bit. I mean, and maybe not. I mean, that's maybe after all this is over. I don't know. I don't know what the health and the history will be, or the future will be of storytelling, because it's going to profoundly affect certain things, I think. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that I don't think that every single person in the world gets changed by anything, but it will affect some people, and that's what I believe is most important about the roles. Like, I was watching Insidious from the first film, and I was like, no, why did they kill her off? No, and waiting for the
James
next.
Wan said the same thing.
Yeah. I was like waiting for what they were going to do with the next film, and I really do think that with Insidious 3, it was probably one of the standout films from that franchise because of you taking the lead role. Because you really just don't see that in horror. Like, a strong older woman who doesn't have any children, isn't some grandma archetype, who comes in and fights off the monsters and saves the day. It's truly heroic. It's amazing. And I think for me that meant a lot. And I'm a gay Mexican man from Kansas, so yeah.
So that's a cross to bear.
Yeah. But I'm sure it meant a lot to other people. You've worked with so many great actors and actresses. You've worked with Barbara Hershey, and what was it like to work with people on Insidious? And in particular, what was it like to perform with them over the span of 4 films?
Well, when we first started, I mean, it's a whole kind of long story. I don't know how much you want me to go into, but how I met James. All right. I mean, James was a friend of actually Tim Sullivan, who was a wonderful director who I worked with on all the 2001 Maniac films. And he's a very talented man. And he and James were acquaintances. They weren't really close, but Tim was coming over and he brought James to my house because James was a fan of a little film I did called Dead End that was, I think, 2002 already, one of my all-time favorites. If you've never seen it, it's worth seeing. So James came over and he was just very sweet. And I gave him a copy. I had 2 copies of the film. So I gave him a copy of Dead End. And then not long after that, he called me and he said, would you be willing to work on a little video that I'm doing with my partner, Lee Winnell? I'd never met Lee. And he said, it's called Doggy Heaven. And it's going to be a prequel for an Xbox release. So it was going to be this video, straight to video, 10, 15-minute little short. So I said, sure. So it was this really kind of extreme character. It's very cute. It's called Doggy Heaven. I think it's still on YouTube. It might be it's worth checking out also. And it was this real extreme character. You know, I mean, people, the one thing people get from way back from Mary, something about Mary and Kingpin, is that I like to dress up in different outfits and different. So this woman was definitely had an outfit. She was in, she had a little dog named Miss Marple. And it's very cute. It's very funny, actually. It's they make a mistake and send Lee Winnell's character to dog heaven instead of real heaven by mistake, and it's very funny. So we did that, and I met them. You know, I met Lee, and I also met Mike Mendez at that point, who's become a very good friend, and it works with James sometimes as producer. So then a little bit after that, he just said, I've got this script and I don't know if we're actually going to do it. Would you take a look at it? And it was he said, we don't know what the title is yet. It might be called The Further. We're not sure. So he sent it over, and Lee is a really skilled and beautiful writer. And I remember reading it in bed, and it was so scary. The way even he changed font of his print, like when things got creepy. And I remember I actually put it downstairs in the closet. I didn't really want to sleep with it in my room with me. And it was to play Elise. And I thought it was I knew she talked a lot. That was the first thing I noticed mostly about the material. And I told James, yeah, it would be great, you know, if it ever happens. He said, well, I've got the script out to Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne. And literally a day or so later, he called and he said, they've signed on. And I said to him, I'm in, whatever. I said, I'd love to do it. So then he called and told me they had signed on. And it's a little bit intimidating. I mean, Patrick, I didn't know very well at all. I had never met him, or Barbara, or Rose, either, you know, the three of them I had never met. But hopefully something does happen. I mean, they're real actors. They're not personalities, you know, they're not big stars like we're talking about, which has negative connotation in some way too, because you start buying your own ego, and in my mind, it's a little bit of a dead end, to pardon the expression. So once you start working, and Patrick is really terrific. He's a really skilled, seasoned, he comes out of theater like I do. I also come out of New York theater. And so everything sort of fades away about that intimidation when you really start working on the scene and you start having a connection with each other. So it becomes very, it isn't intimidating anymore, you know, because you forget about that part of it. An example of that for me really was when I did Kingpin, which is another very long story. But Woody Harrelson to me was he's a huge movie star. I mean, he's just and my scenes were with him, and I was terrified. I mean, I was first of all terrified because I worked so hard to get this role, and she's described as the angriest, ugliest woman God ever let loose on the planet. And I worked it out in my bedroom, and I begged for the audition, and I actually got the job. And Woody also was one of the best people I've ever worked with. It was not like, who's this little actress who's from whatever. He dove into those scenes with me, and I don't know if you've ever seen Kingpin. Have you ever seen it? Oh, John, do yourself a big favor. It's one of the funniest movies ever made. It's Bill Murray, Woody Harrelson. It was directed by the Farrelly brothers. It was the film right after Dumb and Dumber. Seriously, it's the funniest movie you'll ever see, and the character I play is the funniest role I've ever had. I mean, for real. And Woody made it happen. I mean, when you see the film, you'll understand what I'm saying. He was such a team player. So I think it's a trap to let fame or notoriety intimidate you and take you away from your own core. But it still can happen. That's not saying that can't happen. When I got on the set of Penny Dreadful, these are all established television actors. Natalie Dormer, who is the star of Game of Thrones and who's won every award in the book, and she's she's unreal. I couldn't do what she did. I couldn't do what she does. She's extraordinary. And so I realized when I got on set with Penny Dreadful, I got very quiet. I mean, I just tried to not make too many, not make too much noise, and not ask too many questions. And it was my place in that scenario is different. So it's almost like you also have to be aware of the hierarchy of who's in charge, and you can't just come in and then, I mean, that's in any job. It's not just as an actor, but I found myself, because lately people have been asking my opinions about things, and I do kind of become in charge of sometimes dialogue change, and people respect my opinion about character development and what's might be missing, and that's fun, to be able to participate in that. And this was a totally different experience for me at this point in my career. I did what I was told. There's no line changes. It was very clear, made clear to us that this is a writer's show. You do what it's no, can I say, and instead of that, could I say, the answer is no. And don't bring it up or you're fired. It's like, so it was for me very humbling, to become a real listener again, and try and learn from the speed at which they operate, even though that was a very luxurious show because it's Showtime and they had a lot of money and a lot of time. But nevertheless, it's very different than feature film for me. I mean, in terms, or at least my position was very different. And I still hope I did a good job. That's all my bottom line. So that was a long story, but.
Well, I mean, that's crazy that it could be so different, even like from, I'm sure it was different in a Penny Dreadful script reading versus reading for, say, The Grudge, and those are so recent.
Right, and Insidious too, because James, they gave me, James wanted my input, and so did Nicholas Pesh. I mean, we worked very closely, and if the line wasn't working, we would change it or we would discuss it, and again, this was a very different experience for me. So, hopefully I'm still growing as well, and the fact that as an artist I'm allowed to participate, for me, is very much part of the fun. And I love doing, don't get me wrong, Penny Dreadful is a real feather in my cap. These are extraordinary actors, extraordinary storytelling, extraordinary the set design and wardrobe. The production values are through the roof. And it was, again, for me, time to be quiet and listen and learn, like we all need to keep doing.
That being said, would you go back for another Insidious film if that came up?
For Insidious? Oh, of course. If there was another one. Oh, of course. I would do anything with James or Lee or anybody in that arena. I don't think there will be, to be honest. I think that we finished. I mean, who knows? You never say never, depending on what the audience is looking for and asking for. James is so busy. Because he's got his own production company now, and he's finishing up this with the pandemic. Everything came to a halt, but he's still in. There's a film he did, an indie that he made. Well, it's his own indie, but a little horror film. I think it's a horror film. I'm not in it, but that I know he was trying to finish up. So, but I would always be. These are people that I respect so highly, and I have so much fun with, and I feel so comfortable with creatively. And so those are the things that are the most important to me, I think, ultimately. So the answer is yes.
Yes. Oh, Lord. I love those films. They're amazing. I think that, like, looking again at those lists that people make online for the horror movies to watch during quarantine and stuff, you'll find a lot of your films on there.
Well, I will? Oh, okay. That's good.
Things like, well, you've been in legendary films like Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Insidious for the entire last decade, which was great. So, what would you say to fans of horror and their work as the godmother of horror during these times with your films? What would you say to look forward to or look to?
To look for in terms of other films to watch, you mean?
Oh, no, look to in terms of hope, potentially. in these
Oh,
trying
in
times?
terms of hope. Now, do you mean in life or in the industry or?
Oh,
Um,
particularly with this crisis.
oh man, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess, when you talk about Elise, what we were just talking about the character being, people have lost sight of, I don't know what. I don't know if I sometimes put technology as a problem, that people have become so, there's too much information, there's too much static. I mean, there's too much stuff. And I honestly feel sometimes we're not built to process all of that, that it's sort of that it short circuits the way we really think and feel about things. And things go too fast. Like, you hurry up, everybody. You got to have it now. It's very. I want it. I want it now. I want it now. You want everything immediately. That people don't know how to wait for things, or they don't know how to take their time to go from point A to point B. They want to go from point A to the. Yes, you want to get there already because you've got all this technology sort of pushing you in rapidly forward. So I guess I mean, I think it's really a time to sit back and think a little bit about what you want, what's important to you, what's important to the people around you, how to behave. I mean, we are so glib with everything. We don't really take the time to process sometimes the way we think, what we say, how we say it. And people, especially with the media, it's so much is misinterpreted, especially with texting, and you don't hear how someone really feels about something. You could say a sentence that might set somebody off into a frenzy, which you didn't mean that way at all, because they don't hear the tone of your voice, they don't see you. So there's so much. It's overwhelming, and I think if anything that the pandemic, this quieting down, that there's it's a sort of a valuable time to reconsider what you want, how you want to get it, how you behave, how you treat yourself. And I think it's ultimately a very good thing. I mean, that people are dying is horrible, and that they will discover some kind of a vaccine. Also, all this chaos here without, all these people pushed together. We don't know, there won't be a giant spike again in this disease in the next 2 to 4 weeks. I mean, there's so much unknown, and I think we've operated as if we know everything. We've got it together. Well, we don't. And so I would say, I would encourage people to use this time to self-reflect on themselves, on what they want, how they go about getting it, and the people around them, and family.
Yeah, because it parallels with that, especially with the fourth film, where Elise is confronted by some evil, and in this world it's the virus, and she's forced to figure out who she is, what she wants, and how she's going to respond.
Right, exactly. That's a very good parallel. Gee, I didn't know we did that. Yeah, no, it is. That's an excellent parallel in many respects.
Where do you think you would like to go after films like The Grudge and shows like Penny Dreadful? What would you like to explore with your acting talents? You've done a lot of horror characters and a lot of comedic characters, but what's next for Lin Shaye?
I honestly don't know 100%. I've been working on, although I'm not a really, I'm not a very linear worker when I'm creating something. I find my best creations, even my thoughts when I'm working on a character, come when I'm not expecting it. I mean, all of a sudden, I really need to leave myself open to vulnerability and inspiration, and that's the only way I can really. I can't sit down and write my script, or I can't sit down and write a play, or I can't sit down. But what I've been working on, which we'll see if it ever comes to fruition. I think it is a play that could become a film, and it's about me in the '60s. Because I grew up in, as we all know, I'm getting up there, and it's about a particular time in my life in San Francisco, and it's kind of that's what I've kind of been creatively thinking about. And again, it's not finished, and I've had meetings, little Zoom meetings with a couple of people who gave me some thoughts and ideas. It's about 10 pages long, and I have to read it because part of it will be narration, and it will be, but I want it to kind of be interactive theater. I come out of theater, and I love theater. I haven't done it in a long time, and creating an experience for the audience. It would be partly narration, partly actors, and partly slides and film. So it would be, and music, a lot of music, because music was the 60s. So it would be take off on sound, the sound design of it would be very rich. And actually my son is a musician, and he does a lot of stuff with computer and synthesizer, and I would want him to design the sound, to do the sound design. So it's kind of very slowly, it wouldn't be very expensive to do, which is of course a big issue, and that's part of the reason I would do it as a piece of theater before a film, for sure, because getting money to do a film is just crazy. And I mean, you can always shoot it on your iPhone, but that's not what we're talking about either. So at the moment, that's kind of where my creative thoughts go. And there was supposed to be another season of Penny Dreadful. I don't know what's happening with it. I think there was one written, and I think my character, her name is Dottie Minter is her name. I think she's got a place in it, but all this is, I don't know for sure. So I'm really open, and kind of enjoying the lack of pressure, to
get on it. Next thing.
Yeah, I mean, because it's scary. I'm always terrified. By the way, and always. But so I'm just kind of I'm open to to my own all my own fears, my own ideas, and we'll see where it leads. Well, tell me about. I was just going to ask, are you primarily a writer? Are you primarily, what is your, how did you find me, and what was of interest for you?
Well,
and
I work for Tiger Media Network as a writer. I do movie reviews and some other reviews. And well, before I worked there, I saw a review that was not favorable of my favorite Insidious film, and I'm like, no, this has to change.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I went into the comments and said, I am not reading these reviews anymore, and I went there, I got the job. I'm releasing a review of the series in my perspective of that. But yeah, I write film reviews and work on my own film projects. But
well, just in advance, thank you for inviting me on in your world. So
yes, thank you so much. I guess there are a few actors and actresses that I really have admired, and I very much wanted to talk to you before. So it's been a great opportunity. Speaking of those personal projects, which character do you think embodies you as a human being, or took a lot of you to create the character?
Well, that's a good question. That's a great question. I think I find a spot for the real me in everything. I mean, it has to be shaped, because you're there to tell a story that fulfills a place in a bigger story. But I always go to my own take on how I think it would go. And again, if it's in if the character is supposed to be in pain, you find whatever that might be for you personally. I do anyway. And the experience that you express may be different than what maybe it will be totally individual, because it's yours, obviously. So I think a character that's probably closest to me, I would probably say Elise. Because there was an opportunity also within that storyline to express a lot of feelings about my past, the things with my father, abuse. Not that I never was abused, but I am very aware of what that might be for a child. I've had, you kind of draw on your own personal information and not, even if it's not experience. But I thought there were very powerful themes that I tried to bring as much as of my own attitude and my own experience into. So
I just wonder how much that means to, say, a little girl watching a horror film, and she's scared, or a teenage girl, and she sees like this, and especially in the fourth film where you develop from a young girl into an adult, and there's that scene where Elise is in the further, and she's speaking to her younger self and telling her not to give up, and to powers. I wonder how much that means if, like, little girls across the country and throughout the entirety of the United States history were told through their televisions that you can do it, you can be strong, you can be yourself, and things like that. And that's why I feel Insidious was very inspiring, because it's really badass and it's really cool.
That she really takes care. And she's an unexpected hero. I mean, it's not, and I think that's what makes it fun too for an audience, is that. I mean, there was that one scene where the woman in black is trying to strangle me. I think that was in the third one, and I
watch that on repeat. I did. I watch it to get me inspired. It's just like, come on, bitch, bad.
I forget what exactly the line was even, but yeah, but and that was, I think I improvised that line. So. Anyway, it's very, very fun. I hope I have many more stories to tell, and mostly stay well. I mean, that we all have to try and stay healthy. And I mean, I don't know. It's hard to keep I'm not a real optimist, to be honest. I'm a bit of a pessimist. But I think we have to find a way to be kind to ourselves and to the people around us, and that will alleviate some of the pressure. Is intense. So even though you're like you said, would you say a little gay boy from Canada, you're awesome. And don't you ever forget it.
Thank you so much. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience, or anything that you are hopeful for the future concerning anything?
Boy, that's a big, I think pretty much, we covered a lot of it, I think, but I think it is really to tell the truth, both to yourself and to the people around you. Be kind. People can be so nasty. And I still don't understand why people are not just people. I mean, my real feeling is we're an awful animal. The animal world is so beautiful. I'm a real animal advocate. I mean, I have a horse, and I have dogs and cats always, and I love creatures. I love spiders. I love creatures. The only thing I don't like mosquitoes very much. But the fact that we can't treat each other and things around us. Who cares what color you are? Pardon the expression, who gives a shit? I mean, really, I'm sorry. It's like, you can't get over that. Get over it. Get over it. It's time to move on and realize the value of life is so fragile to begin with, and that we piss it away. I'm sorry, I'm using bad, negative language here, but that's what I feel like we waste it. We waste so much time and so much energy on negativity. And I would encourage people to think before you speak. It's a good thing to think a little bit before you speak. It's good to be spontaneous, don't get me wrong, but kindness is so important right now. And if you need to take a beat before you can be kind, take your beat, because there's no excuse for being nasty, and no excuse to hurt other people's feelings, and no excuse to act like a jerk. I mean, you really gotta get a hold of yourself. That's what I would say. Get a hold of yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us, Lynn.
Thank you. You've been wonderful too. I appreciate it, John. Good luck with everything. Stay well too. And you're a beautiful, wonderful journalist and from the little I've met you, you're a beautiful, wonderful person. So thank you for the opportunity.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.